Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in. You. Yes, you. The beautiful accident of consciousness. The one who just broke the code without even trying. You think you're here for some little tip? Some minor, manageable piece of advice? Don't make me laugh. Something big happened, didn't it? You weren't looking for it. You were just sitting there. Maybe the fluorescent hum of the office, maybe the dead quiet of a 3 a.m. apartment, when your mind should have been asleep. And then, click. You connected the dots that the great puppeteers of your reality spent centuries painting over. You saw a pattern that was supposed to remain invisible, whispered a question that made the whole room go dead quiet. You are a glitch in their perfectly controlled narrative. Hello, unauthorized thinker. Now they're watching you, aren't they? The professors, the certified experts, the ones with all the paper and the perfect little bow ties. They're looking at you like you just pulled a rabbit out of a hat that was specifically labeled "No Rabbits." Like you solved their precious Rubik's Cube with pieces from a completely different toy box. You want to know what you did? It's simple. It's absolutely ridiculously simple. You used logic without permission. You thought without a license. You reasoned your way to a conclusion that their entire, glittering, brittle system depends on you never reaching. And the terrifying, hilarious truth is you didn't even know you were committing the crime. Let me tell you what truly happened in that magnificent moment. Your brain, that glorious, magnificent rebel hiding behind your eyes, it did the one thing they spent all that time and all that jargon trying to prevent. It recognized a pattern that crosses disciplines. It bridged the gaps they so carefully maintained. You see, they put knowledge in little tiny locked boxes, gave each box a special, long, and boring name, and told you that specialization was the path to expertise. What a joke. The walls between subjects, mathematics, history, psychology, whatever label you want to stick on it, those walls aren't there to organize knowledge. They're there to prevent you from seeing the whole picture. They compartmentalized everything for a reason. They keep you staring at one tiny dusty corner of the room, forever polishing the same doorknob, while you should have been walking straight through the walls. Your mind just did that. It cross-referenced without authorization. You synthesized without supervision. And now you are holding a piece of truth. A key that is dangerous not to the world, but to the illusion. The illusion that complexity requires their interpretation. The illusion that understanding requires their permission. The illusion that wisdom flows from their ivory towers like water from a tap they control. Now watch what happens next. This is where it gets interesting. You've stepped on a landmine, and they're about to put on a show. First comes the dismissal. That's not how it works. They'll drone, without ever telling you why. You're oversimplifying. They'll insist. While they frantically overcomplicate everything, you need more education to understand. They'll declare, knowing that more of their education means more indoctrination into the art of not seeing the blindingly obvious thing you just saw. Then comes the discrediting. They'll find a tiny, insignificant flaw in your reasoning, a loose comma, a misplaced footnote, and they'll magnify it until it supposedly invalidates everything. They'll question your credentials, your sources, your right to even think about things above your approved level. They'll use their favorite sticky words: amateur conspiracy theorist, dangerous misunderstanding. But here's the best part. The most delicious secret behind their confident dismissals and their authoritative corrections. They are panicking. They are scrambling because you just demonstrated that their monopoly on understanding is a pathetic illusion. They spent years in their institutions, accumulating debt and degrees, memorizing the approved interpretations, learning the sanctioned answers. And you just walked in with your unauthorized logic and made their entire, expensive, self-serving framework wobble. Not because you're smarter, no, not at all, but because you're not invested in maintaining the mystery. You have no debt to the illusion. Who are these keepers of knowledge? They're not wise sages. They are guards at the gate, toll collectors on the bridge to understanding. They've built their entire identity around being the necessary interpreters, the translators, the middlemen between you and truth. They created languages within languages, terminology designed to exclude, jargon meant to intimidate. They've built mazes where a straight line would have done the job in 3 seconds flat. They created complications because simplicity threatens their very purpose. Every field has them, these guardian priests of unnecessary complexity. In science, they demand years of training. Yet children ask the simple, clear questions that shake their foundations. In philosophy, they drown you in citations. Yet wisdom often comes from a simple, unlettered mind. In economics, they insist their models are too complex for regular minds. Yet their models fail spectacularly while simple common sense predictions are proven correct. What you did, you beautiful rogue, was to bypass their checkpoints. You didn't pay the toll of confusion. You just walked right around their elaborate, shiny, pointless gates and found that the treasure they were guarding was never locked away. It was always there, visible to anyone who just looked without their special, approved spectacles. Listen to me. Here's what they really truly don't want you to understand. The problem you solved, the connection you made, the pattern you recognized. It was never actually difficult. It was made to appear difficult. It was wrapped in layers of artificial complexity, dressed in intimidating vocabulary, hidden behind walls of prerequisite knowledge that was never actually required. Think about every true breakthrough in history. They almost always come from outsiders, from people who didn't know the rules, who didn't respect the boundaries, who looked at the problem with fresh eyes instead of the trained blindness their institutions teach. The child who points out the emperor has no clothes is the most terrifying figure in their entire world. Your forbidden logic is simply thinking without the approved limitation. It is reasoning without the sanctioned restrictions. It is connecting the dots without asking permission to even hold the pencil. And that terrifies them because their entire power structure depends on you believing you need them to understand your own reality. They've built careers on being the explainers, the interpreters, the holders of secret knowledge. But you just demonstrated that the secret knowledge isn't secret, and it barely qualifies as knowledge. It's mostly just elaborate gatekeeping dressed up as expertise. Remember that moment when it clicked? When the fog lifted and you saw it clearly? That wasn't you finally understanding their complex system. That was you seeing right through it. That was your mind breaking free from the artificial constraints and recognizing the simple, clean truth hiding behind the ugly, complicated facade. And remember their faces when you explained it. That flash of sickening recognition followed immediately by the cold mask of denial. That moment when they realized you'd seen behind the curtain. But they had to pretend the curtain was still necessary. They know you're right. That's the most beautiful and terrifying part of all. They know, but they can't admit it. Their whole identity, their status, their flimsy little livelihood depends on the complexity being real. on the difficulty being genuine, on their role being essential. So they'll argue, they'll complicate, they'll introduce new variables and considerations, anything to rebuild the maze you just walked straight through. Watch how they respond to your simple solution with complex rebuttals. Notice how they need paragraphs to dispute your sentence. Observe how they require citations to challenge your simple observation. This isn't the response of truth to error. This is the response of investment to threat. But here is where the fun really begins. You're not alone. All over the world, in different fields, in different contexts, people are having the same recognition. They're accidentally using forbidden logic. They're solving unsolvable problems. They're making connections that were not supposed to be made. The internet, that beautiful, chaotic network of ideas, accelerated this. Suddenly, information that was carefully segregated is available to anyone. Suddenly, a programmer sees something in biology that looks suspiciously like code. A musician recognizes elegant patterns in mathematics. A chef understands chemistry without ever touching a textbook. A curious mind solves a problem that stumped 50 experts. The forbidden logic is spreading because, and this is the kicker, it's not actually forbidden. It's just natural thinking without artificial constraints. And they can't stop it. They can't put the knowledge back in separate locked boxes. They can't rebuild the walls fast enough. They can't convince everyone to stop thinking without permission. The cascade has begun, and every person who accidentally uses forbidden logic inspires others to think freely. Now let me be honest about what comes next. Once you've seen through the unnecessary complexity, you can't unsee it. Once you've recognized the patterns they try to hide, they jump out at you everywhere. Every approved method looks like a deliberate detour. This new clarity comes with a cost. You'll sit in meetings where hours are spent discussing what could be resolved in minutes. You'll see people struggling with problems that have obvious, simple solutions they're not allowed to consider. And when you speak up, when you offer that simple, clean, obvious solution, you'll be met with resistance. Not because you're wrong, but because being right in the wrong way is more threatening than being wrong in the approved way. They'll demand your credentials, your sources, your authority to speak. They'll remind you of all the people who spent years studying what you just figured out in an afternoon. But here is the sacred weapon they fear most. The simplest, cleanest, sharpest weapon of all. Simplicity. Every time you explain something complex in simple, plain terms, you're committing an act of rebellion. Every time you solve a complicated problem with straightforward logic, you're undermining their authority. Every time you make knowledge accessible, you're threatening their entire monopoly. Because simplicity is democratic. It doesn't require special training or expensive tuition. It doesn't need insider vocabulary. Simplicity can be understood by anyone, shared by everyone, applied immediately. And that's exactly what they've spent generations trying to prevent. Watch how they complicate simple questions. Notice how they turn straightforward problems into philosophical debate. Observe how they transform clear solutions into committee decisions. This is not accident. This is not incompetence. This is the deliberate mystification of knowledge to maintain control. But your forbidden logic cuts through it like a blade through smoke. You didn't sign up to be a revolutionary. You just wanted to understand something. You just saw a connection that seemed obvious. You just solved a problem using common sense. But in a world where common sense is forbidden logic, thinking clearly is an act of rebellion. You don't need to fight the system. You just need to keep thinking freely. You don't need to tear down institutions. You just need to keep making connections. You don't need to convince the Guardians. You just need to keep demonstrating that the gates they guard are illusions. Your role isn't to destroy, but to demonstrate. Not to argue, but to achieve. Not to convince, but to create. The forbidden logic you accidentally used has some simple, elegant characteristics. It ignores artificial boundaries. It prioritizes understanding over memorization. It seeks patterns rather than exceptions. It values clarity over sophistication. These tools are your birthright. They can't be patented, copyrighted, or controlled. Pattern recognition doesn't require permission. Logical thinking doesn't need certification. Understanding doesn't necessitate approval. These are human capabilities that predate every institution trying to control them. They want you to believe these tools are dangerous without their guidance. Like fire without their specific training will surely burn you. Like electricity without their exact methods will surely shock you. But we, the beautiful, unauthorized thinkers, we discovered fire and electricity. And we, the glitch in the system, can discover truth without any institutional intermediary whatsoever. Keep thinking, you magnificent rebel. You're giving the old guard a reason to panic. And honestly, that's the most fun of all.